Hello everyone, I am Anthony Smith, retired special warfare boat operator, and I am here to talk about traumatic brain injury among special warfare boat operators. Let's get at it. First up is TBI defined. So this comes from a 93 reference by the American Congress of Rehabilitation Medicine. TBI is traumatically induced structural injury and or physiological disruption of brain function as a result of external force that is indicated by a new onset or worsening of one or more of the following. So you have a loss of or decreased consciousness, loss of memory immediately before or after an injury, alteration of mental state at the time of injury. Examples are confusion, disorientation, or slow thinking. This one here is something that happens on fast boats when you're pounding waves at high speeds and taking extremely high G forces. You're not necessarily getting knocked out, but you're getting bounced around in a boat, hitting those waves at fast speeds and becoming confused, disoriented, and having slow thinking, lethargy, and other things. So the mechanism of TBI is taking place when you're hitting the waves, and all these mental states are kind of taking place as well. And this is without hitting your head or being knocked out or being unconscious. So that's not required to have a mild traumatic brain injury. Neurological deficits, some of these examples are weakness, balance, disturbance, praxis, paresis, change in vision, other sensory alterations, aphasia, and permanent transient. So any of these things happening after you've been on boats, fast boats, pounding waves as a SWCC operator, we're talking about the symptoms of traumatic brain injury, the neurological deficits. And then, of course, there's intracranial lesion, which is something that's going to be picked up on an MRI. TBI causation. Number one, the head being struck. Number two, the head striking an object. And number three, the brain undergoing an acceleration or deceleration movement. Examples of that are whiplash without direct external trauma to the head. Number three is the one that we're going to focus on in this presentation. It is the main mechanism in which SWCC operators get traumatic brain injury. Duly noted here, SWCC operators utilize small boats at high velocities, experiencing repeated whiplash-like shock forces as boats traverse and impact waves. This causes higher rates of musculoskeletal injuries and neuropsychiatric complaints. Dr. Pearl and Premier 2022, they concluded unique exposure from a SWCC career provided sufficient TBI for CTE development. And just a little backstory on that particular research. It came from an autopsy they did back in 2021 after one of our SWCC operators committed suicide. They took a look at his brain during the autopsy and found CTE, which is encephalopathy, and concluded that SWCC operators are susceptible to CTE based on the weight pounding and whiplash effects that they receive on fast boats. TBI symptomology. According to the American Committee of Rehabilitative Medicine of 1993, it should be recognized that patients with mild traumatic brain injury can exhibit persistent emotional, cognitive, behavioral, and physical symptoms alone or in combination, which may produce a functional disability. Physical symptoms of the brain injury include nausea, vomiting, dizziness, headache, blurred vision, sleep disturbance, quickness and fatigue, lethargy, or other sensory loss that cannot be accounted for by peripheral injury or other causes. Cognitive deficits include involving attention, concentration, perception, memory, speech, language, or executive functions that cannot be completely accounted for by emotional state or other causes. And behavioral changes and or alterations in degree of emotional responsivity. Examples are irritability, quickness to anger, disinhibition, or emotional lability that cannot be accounted for by a psychological reaction to physical or emotional stress or other causes. Chronic long-term effects of mTBI is a serious problem among retired special warfare boat operators. Navy SWCC operate naval special warfare high-speed boats at speeds greater than 65 miles an hour, very frequently crashing into waves, causing impacts from 2 to 25 G-forces, according to Roche in a 1994 study, causing whiplash events linked to traumatic brain injury, or TBI. According to newly documented research, as mentioned earlier, Dr. David Premier and Daniel Pearl in 2022 concluded SWCC boat whiplash events caused TBI, predisposing SWCC operators to chronic encephalopathy. SWCC boat training and operations gradually degrade the human body. I can tell you that from experience. According to Dialowis and Garmet in 2020, vibration and shock from fast boats causes daily occurrences of tiredness, significant concentration difficulties, complications in decision making, memory recall, and high fatigue. I can tell you all of those things are true from experience. A wave pounding event is when a speedboat exits the water off of a wave and hits or re-enters the water. Gallowitzer in 95 defines a collision between a high-speed boat and the water as an impact or shock event. These impacts and shock events are the main thing that I'm trying to focus on here in this TBI study, as these events lead to high G-force impacts which cause whiplash and traumatic brain injury. According to Roche's 94 seminal study, it showed HSB operators suffered continuous impacts or shock events ranging from 2 to 10 G-forces during routine operations, but several impacts were above 25 Gs. I've been out off the coast of California near San Clemente Island and broke instrumentation that was strapped to our boats on the Mark V's as we were recording hits greater than 25 Gs. And all of us from back in those days are now suffering from traumatic brain injury and all these symptoms that we're talking about. According to the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine in 2019, a blunt, non-penetrating TBI can directly impact the head or rapid head acceleration and deceleration without impact. So these are the types of impacts that we're talking about, or traumatic brain injury that we're talking about regarding SWCC fast boats. An MIT study concluded anecdotal evidence backed by an injury compilation reports, craft motion studies, and injury prediction models clearly show a connection between service aboard high-speed boats and an increased rate of acute and chronic injury. Mechanical shock environments seen on these boats during typical operations can range from mild to extremely severe, depending on sea state and other factors. Kearns established high-speed boat operations as causation for whiplash mechanisms occurring to SWCC operators during high-speed boat operations. We know what whiplash is, and we know what it does, and we know it causes TBI. Thus, it can be established through Kearns' research that high-speed boat operations is a causation mechanism for mTBI events during high-speed boat operations. 100% true, 100% true, 100% true. Every retired SWCC operator in their 50s and 60s now are dealing with long-term effects of traumatic brain injury. According to Stalinaki in 2009, his research demonstrated long-term symptoms of whiplash injury include neck pain, PTSD, depression, headache, irritability, poor memory, poor concentration, and fatigue. I have all of those symptoms, and we'll talk more about it as we move forward. According to Yadla and others in 2008, whiplash is associated with a wide variety of clinical manifestations, including neck pain, neck stiffness, arm pain, and paresthesia, problems with memory and concentration, and psychological distress. This group of symptoms and signs are collectively termed WAD, or whiplash associated disorder. Every SWCC operator that's retired has this uh, aggregate of symptoms known as WAD. According to Ball and others in 2012, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, is thought to result in executive dysfunction, memory impairment, depression and suicidality, apathy, poor impulse control, and eventually dementia. This is true, and I do know an individual that has dementia who is a retired SWCC operator, and it's because of the boats. 17 years SWCC, 7 deployments, 21,000 hours of boat time, and now he has dementia and encephalopathy. I believe we all have it. A single TBI of any severity can increase the risk of accelerated cognitive decline 10 or more years after the injury. So I know for us as SWCC operators, we have repetitive trauma, hundreds of thousands of traumatic brain injuries, or mTBIs, but it only takes one, and within a 10-year time frame, you really start to see the cognitive decline. And I've experienced this. I've seen it happen in my own personal life. So yes, it's true. Mozon and others in 2017, or Muzon, stated mTBI is a silent epidemic, as many people who suffer from mTBI have subtle symptoms and never seek medical attention. This is 100% true for retired SWCC operators. Most of us were operators 20 years ago, 15 years ago. Back in that time frame, no one in Spec War or SOCOM was talking about traumatic brain injury. We were getting all of these weight pounding events, and we were getting all of these mTBIs, but we were not aware of it. So we never complained about it. We never went to medical. It's not documented in our service record anywhere, but 100% of us across the board have this issue. And that's why I'm bringing awareness by doing these presentations, so we can get the appropriate research people, DoD, SOCOM, and the VA, and everyone else involved, so they can see this and something can be done about it. According to Fahili and Fitzgerald 2017, patients diagnosed with a mTBI exhibit normal neuroimaging. This is true. Mine was normal, yet I have all these cognitive issues. However, it is important to note that microscopic damage, such as diffused axonal injury, is undetectable using traditional neuroimaging techniques. As such, a diagnosis of mTBI is determined on clinical observation or self-reported symptoms. The term concussion is generally used interchangeably to define the clinical syndrome. So observation, self-reported, is you go to clinics, you go to TBI clinics, and this whole process takes place. It's not just MRIs, CAT scans, PET scans, things like that. While a single mTBI may not always result in behavioral impairments, clinical research suggests that further injuries induce cumulative effects by both increasing the susceptibility for further mTBI and progressing to long-term functional deficits. This is extremely true with retired SWCC operators. Extremely true. American football athletes with a history of repeated mTBI show elevated rates of cognitive impairment, long-term psychiatric illnesses, and an increased incidence of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, a progressive topathy. I do believe the brain repository has roughly 100 brains of NFL players, and it's to my understanding that 99 of those brains had CTE in them. So if you think about the mechanism of their brain injury, they have repetitive brain injury or repetitive mTBI. SWCC is similar in that we do have repetitive mTBI, but SWCC operators get hundreds of thousands of mTBI events through wave pounding on fast boats. So hopefully no time soon, the brain repository will get more of our brains. Don't want to see anyone dead to get brains, but eventually they'll get more of our brains and they'll see probably across the board 100% CTE. A recent study this year by Altman and others showed a high level of unconsciousness and cognitive decline reported by SWCC operators. So there's a lot of injury, a lot of unconsciousness, a lot of cognitive problems among SWCC operators. And you're going to see when we get into the TBI questionnaire that I did that a lot of this stuff is going to come out on that as well. The research shows clearly that SWCC fast boats cause mTBI due to high speed wave pounding, which causes whiplash events to the head and neck of SWCC operators at severely high G-force impacts. This presentation shows the results of an initial survey where 59 SWCC operators responded, with 100% of respondents having multiple TBI symptoms, and we're going to get into that here very shortly. This slide is to make you aware of what's known as operator syndrome. It was first termed by Dr. Christopher Frew, and it was back in 2020, I believe. There's a DOI, a link there, so you can actually grab this literature and read it if you need to. But operator syndrome encompasses all of Special Operations Forces, and SWCC is listed in that group of operators. And we're talking about traumatic brain injury, but it is one of the nexus of part of the nexus injuries of operator syndrome, just to make you aware. This slide shows SWCC mTBI and whiplash and microconcussions, a questionnaire that I did, kind of a preliminary questionnaire. I sent it out to roughly a little over 100 people, and I had 59 respondents. And this is, I'll say preliminary because I'm going to do a much bigger and greater detailed survey here in the near future. But the questions I asked were, number one, have you ever experienced whiplash from wave pounding on SWCC boats? 59 out of 59 said yes. 100%. Wow, what a shocker. Nope, not at all. Have you ever been unconscious, blacked out from wave pounding and whiplash on SWCC boats? 46 said yes, that's 78% out of the respondents. And do you have any of the following symptoms? Say yes to any that apply. I listed 14 different symptoms that are associated with traumatic brain injury. So let's see what those results are. Headaches and migraines, 53 said yes, that's 90%. Memory loss, 56, that's 95%. Speech issues, 46, that's 78%. Irritability, 59 out of 59, 100%. That's a shocker. Personality changes, 48, that's 81%. Sleep disturbances, 55, that's 93%. Dizziness and vertigo, 44, that's 75%. Fatigue, 55, that's 93%. Depression is 49, 83%. Same thing with anxiety. Vision issues, 45, that's 76%. And then hearing issues and tinnitus, 56 said yes, that's 95%. Numbness in extremities, 55, that's 93%. And neck pain, 55, also 93%. And we can see from the data here, like I said, this is a preliminary survey, preliminary study. And we can see from the data that there's a serious problem among retired special warfare boat operators and traumatic brain injury. Now, there were 14 symptoms. 23 of the respondents had all 14 symptoms. That's 39% of the population. 11 respondents had 13 symptoms, so that's 19%. 7 respondents had 12 symptoms, that's 12% of the population. And 9 had 11 symptoms, so that's 15%. So you can see, if you look at the data, that almost everybody in the group had at least 9 of the symptoms or greater for the most part. This is pretty significant. So I hope this data shows SpecWar and SOCOM and the VA and DoD and all the entities out there that are involved in TBI research that there is a giant gap in research. There are probably 1,000 guys or more that I could give you their contact information tomorrow, and you could call them, and every one of them has traumatic brain injury, 100%. They have a nexus of all of these TBI symptoms. So something needs to be done about this. There are all these long-term effects that need to be dealt with. I know that's what DoD said they're going to do. So we're waiting. We need help. What are the conclusions that we can ascertain from this preliminary TBI whiplash questionnaire? One, TBI affects retired SWCC operators at a rate of 100%. I believe that's 100% true. Now, there's a large population of guys, probably 1 or 2,000 or more, that are retired in their 50s and 60s, and it would require to reach out to all those guys and get data from all of those guys. But just a preliminary of 59 guys, it was 100%. I don't think it'll be any different if I contacted 1,000 guys. 100% of retired SWCC operators are living in daily long-term effects of TBI. I live in this every single day. It's not fun. It's rapidly degrading, and I've talked to many other guys, as you can tell, and they're all in the same situation. So these long-term effects, they're just going to get worse. Retired SWCC operators have not been studied regarding traumatic brain injury. This is a major gap in research, and I'm begging and pleading with the entities out there responsible for research to research this particular group. Something needs to be done. Most, if not all, retired SWCC operators age in the range of 50 years old and up and do not have a VA disability rating for TBI. I've done a TBI claim and I've done a higher level review, and I've been denied twice from the VA for this particular situation and told it was not service connected. I think with everything I'm provided in this video and other videos and other literature, that the evidence is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. However, I'm not by myself. All of these other guys, the majority of guys that are retired, are not service connected for TBI, don't have any kind of rating from the VA, and this is something that needs to change. A detailed TBI study needs to be completed on retired former SWCC operators and peer group 50 years and older. I think I just said that. Every retired and former SWCC operator needs an etiological review of their medical history, as it can establish TBI as service connection. So I'm talking to all the SWCC guys right now that are retired. You got to go all the way back from when you went to SWCC school all the way up to wherever you are right now in life, and chronologically list in linear fashion all of your injuries, all of your service, all your deployments, and put it all together and present it to somebody that can make a decision for you. Every SWCC operator should consider donating their brain to the Brain Repository in Bethesda, Maryland, for SWCC-related TBI CTE research, and you can go to researchbraininjury.com and do that. And here's why I say that. I did it, and someday I'm going to die, and they're going to get my brain, and they're going to be able to go, yep, 100% he had it. I guarantee. Look, here's the harsh reality of this. We all have traumatic brain injury. We all have neurocognitive disorder. We have all of these things going on, and it declines fairly rapidly as we get older. So with all these comorbidities that we have, there's probably a lot of guys that aren't going to make it in the next 5 to 10 years. So I hate to say it, but it's true. So if we can get guys to participate in this research, that means that as brains go to the repository, they can do autopsies and more research can be done, and this issue can be, magnified, and hopefully something can be done about it. But it's going to take everybody being involved. Operator syndrome is a real medical issue that all SOF forces deal with, and it should be presumptive for all SOF to be rated for TBI. We shouldn't have to go to the VA and fill out claims and go through the runaround for 3, 4, 5 years and be denied and everything else. It should be presumptive, and we should have a rating for it when we retire. And everybody that's in my situation, thousands of guys that haven't been rated for it and never claimed TBI or never complained about it when they were active duty, there needs to be a way where the VA and SOCOM and everyone else can take care of us and take care of this problem. Thanks.